We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance then, and we'll go from there. Trent, if you will do your thing. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Thank you, Trent. Thank you all. We've got a pretty jam-packed agenda here for tonight's meeting, so I appreciate everyone coming in. I guess we'll make decisions for the rest of C4 for those that don't chime in tonight. Next order of business is just approval of the February 4th C4 minutes. You can have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, changes? All right. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes for the February 4th meeting? I'm counting hands, and any those not in favor? Any abstentions? All right, that passes. Thank you all. First on our agenda this evening is the Climate Action Plan update. And presenting tonight, I think we have Cheryl Bell and Eben Polk and Sarah Allison here to present. They are joining the group. Good evening. How are you all?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us here in the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, and we're anxious to hear what you've all been working on. And I will take it, let's see, send it to, who's leading this charge? Cheryl, are you in charge?
Yeah, I'm going to start us off.
Okay.
Well, thank you again for having us here tonight. My name is Cheryl Bell, and I am the Assistant Director of Development for the Department of Transportation and Development. Sustainability and solid waste programs in my portfolio. I'm joined tonight by Eben Polk, our Sustainability Supervisor, and Sarah Allison, a Sustainability Analyst, and we're here to give you an update on the county's Climate Action Plan. We joined you all in June 4th, 2020, and at least for me, 2020 was a blur. It was a lifetime ago, so we're here to give you some updates from our June presentation, and then, of course, to answer your questions. So Sarah, if I could have the next slide, please, that'd be great. Perfect. So as a backpacker, I like having a map of where I'm going. So for tonight, this is going to be our map. We will provide an overview of the project as we understand there's some new C4 members. And then, well, last time we were here was 2020, and we all know what 2020 was like. We're going to share results of the city's survey that you and your staff completed regarding outreach related to this project. We're going to tell you about the consultant team that we've hired to do this work because they're pretty fabulous. We're going to dive into a high-level overview of some of the analysis and engagement work that's underway. And then we're going to end with some next steps and then plenty of time for your questions. Sarah, if you want to advance, perfect. So when we last joined you in June, we used that meeting to focus on what successful engagement with this project looked like to all of you. It generated great conversation. We really appreciated being able to be with you. And we followed up that meeting with a survey about engagement, which we're going to talk about in more detail tonight. At that time, we had also just posted the RFP to hire the consultant, and we shared a high-level overview of the project schedule. So as we come to you tonight, unfortunately, we are a little bit behind in this project. The work of this project has really been delayed as we continue to navigate COVID, but really impactfully for this project, the wildfires and the ice storms have delayed us. Both Sarah and Eben have been deeply involved in emergency response to both of these events. Eben is our debris manager and has been doing amazing work for the county and the community. But responding to these disasters is really critically important to our communities. So while we've been responding, we had to delay work a number of times. We have been able to take some important actions though, most importantly of which was hiring our consultant team. They're doing an amazing job of leading the project while staff have been focused on response and recovery. And we're working diligently to make up for lost time while also knowing we need to give this work the time and attention it deserves. Sarah, if you want to flip the next slide, perfect. So we really acknowledge this delay in some revisions we're requesting to our goal. Our new board recently had a retreat to review and study Performance Clackamas, or our strategic plan. And in this work, the board is reaffirming their commitment to this goal. And staff has put forward a suggestion to change the target for the climate action plan from January of 22 to January of 23. This change will allow staff and the consultants the ability to make up for these delays and do this work in a thoughtful way, especially the engagement, which is a key piece of this project. And we want to make sure we don't rush that. So now I kind of share a high-level overview of where we are. I'm going to pass things over to Eben to provide more detail on the project, including sharing those results of that city survey.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening, mayors, councilors, commissioners. It's good to be back with you. We're excited to share this update. So if you were not part of C4 in our last meeting, I'm going to cover a little bit of ground that we covered in that meeting, just to get you caught up. Besides, it's been so long that even if you were in that meeting, I know I can barely remember what we covered then. So our climate action plan is laying out like this at a fairly high level. First of all, there's kind of two core concepts to it. One of them is carbon neutrality, which is doing our part as a county to address climate change and kind of decoupling economic success from our carbon pollution. And that will allow us to become carbon neutral by 2050. And then secondly, we are seeing and we will continue to see changes in our local ecology and impacts to important systems that we depend on. And so we want our plan to promote resilience and adaptation to understand, prepare for, and be more resilient to the present and future impacts of climate change. The plan, of course, lays out approximately a 30-year planning horizon, of course, now more like 29. And we have asked our consultant to develop 3 two-year implementation plans so that even as we finalize the plan, we are already talking about the practical implications of what we at the county are going to do next as we pivot into implementation. And those implementation plans will be a very helpful focal point for us to discuss the resources that we have and how to prioritize the actions. It's a county-wide scope. We have asked our our consultants to estimate and then project what our carbon emissions are going to look like over the next 30 years if we don't take any additional action. And as part of that, we recognize that it'll be really important for us to create opportunities to partner with you, the cities, to understand both in the planning process and then in the implementation process, what are the ways that we can, our plan, while it's geared towards the county, what are the ways that the plan can create value for you? There's a lot more great information in the kickoff presentation, and the link to that presentation should be in your packet that you had for tonight. So if you'd like to delve into the project in greater detail, our consultants did a good job of framing the value they're going to bring to the table as they move forward. So I would encourage you, if you have a little bit of time, to take a look at that. Right now, we are still in sort of the number 1 and 2 categories down at the bottom of this slide. As you see here, we're still very much at the beginning of the process, working on the inventory and understanding what policies are in place that will allow us to craft a projection of business as usual emissions going forward. Next slide. So as Cheryl mentioned, we released a survey. When we met with you in June, we heard a pretty wide range of different thoughts about what would be most valuable to you in this action plan process. And so we got a little bit more good information through the survey. We asked if you would tell us kind of what your preferred level of involvement might be, from 0 involvement to wanting to be engaged on an ongoing basis throughout the process. And we heard back from 9 cities, and almost every city said, yes, we want to be engaged on an ongoing basis. and also nominated staff to provide some contacts. Mayor Pulliam, I see your hand raised. So let me come to you as soon as I finish talking through these results, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, we have some points of contact from you for those that responded to the survey. And one of the things we did as a result of the survey was we asked our consultants to plan for a city-specific subcommittee that would be formed and participate with us throughout the planning process. And since those points of contact are a little bit dated, and they ranged anywhere from an elected official to staff, we're going to follow up on you with you to confirm those. So let me pause. Say, Mayor Pulliam.
Yeah, just quick question. I don't remember seeing anything come across my email. Did you reach out to committee members of C4, to staff at the city? Just who was your outreach to?
Yeah, I know it went at least to the C4 membership at the time.
Okay, so it must have, and I just missed it. I was just curious. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure, and we would be happy to send you the questions that were asked in that survey.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Sarah, next slide. So as we crafted the RFP, with including a little bit of input from the cities, we were really pleased to see 10 teams express interest in the work. And we ended up selecting a company called SSG, Sustainability Solutions Group, and their subconsultants, What If, which is a company that's running all of the modeling for the economics in this piece and all the emissions forecasts. And then a company called Co-Creative, which has local staff who are leading our community engagements. There were a couple of things that we really liked about them, and I think we may have a slide or two in here to illustrate that. Yes, thank you, Sarah. So one of the strengths that they brought to the table was a strong awareness of economics. And that includes a sense of the costs and benefits and the trade-offs of different actions that will reduce our carbon footprint, but also add value to our community. And this is an actual analysis from one of the communities that they have served with a climate action plan in the past. And it's just intended to illustrate that they're forecasting out through 2050 the economic returns of some of the different actions that community opted to pursue. And everything below the zero line is net savings over time. So they've mapped out that for this community, the suite of actions that the community chose is going to provide pretty significant net benefits in the form of energy cost savings, local revenues, operations and maintenance savings, and so on. So we were pretty impressed with that. Next slide, please. Another aspect of economics, of course, is job creation. And this is another thing they brought to the table, was the ability to look at climate action planning through the lens of jobs. And this, again, is another example of an analysis from a community that they completed a climate action plan for. And it shows the net job creation or loss from different actions that community chose over time. And you can see that this community selected a suite of actions that would, on balance, create many, many more jobs than might be lost as a result of climate action. And those were in a number of different sectors, from buildings and energy being the most noticeable. Thank you, Commissioner Savas, for that typo. Okay. So this slide, try not to, I'll try to keep you focused on the basics here, because this slide is a little confusing. I'll just draw your attention to the bottom to start with. The outputs in the green row along the bottom reflect the major deliverables that the consulting team is going to bring to us. The first one is going to be an inventory of our current greenhouse gas emissions in the county. The next one is going to be a forecast of what those emissions will look like if we continue business as usual. After that, they will model some different options for scenarios and identify a low carbon scenario that gets us to carbon neutral. That will then be converted into an action plan. Now, going into those deliverables are, of course, a bunch of inputs that you see along the top and key process points. And this graphic is really intended to illustrate that there will be multiple points of engagement and input for the community as each deliverable is crafted. And it's also intended to show how data flows between steps. The greenhouse gas inventory that they were able to do for us is actually done at the spatial level, so it can be mapped. And the policy analysis that they're doing, which is used to forecast our emissions going forward, is taking into account local, regional, and state policies. Next slide. So we have been able to do, despite the delays of the project with the pandemic and everything, we have been able to do some engagement work as we work our way towards a complete community engagement plan. Our engagement consultant has done a number of interviews with stakeholders in the community, as well as some of our county commissioners, to get a sense for our community and how our community approaches issues like climate change. And we have also solicited applications for 2 task forces to start. First is our main community task force. We got 60 applications for that, and then have been supplementing that with a couple of targeted asks to fill gaps that we saw in our application base. And that task force membership is still pending. We're hoping to be able to bring that to our board in coming weeks. We also, as I hope we can all appreciate, we know that many of us, probably myself included, I'm not going to be working at Clackamas County in 2050. And younger generations are really much more impacted by the issue of climate change than folks of my generation or older. And it is important that youth have a voice in these issues. So we have put together, with help from PGA, a youth advisory task force, and we received around 24 applications for that recently from all across the county. It was really neat to see. Those things are going to go into the development of an engagement plan, which we hope to present to our board in coming weeks. Next slide, please. All right, I believe this is where I pass it back to Cheryl.
Thanks, Evan. So as Hugh noted, we have a lot going on in this project, so this kind of covers our next steps. Key for us is finalization of those 2 important pillars of the project that Evan was talking about, the task force and the community engagement plan. We are really drawing near on those benchmarks, and we're really looking forward to welcoming everyone to the task force and getting started in this work. Once the task force is underway, we'll be working in concert with them to launch those subcommittees that Evan was mentioning, because they are going to be working closely with the task force. So in addition to that youth subcommittee that we had so many applications for and we're really excited, we'll be looking to fill 3 groups who will be targeting specific issues. One for cities, one for the rural community, and one for businesses. We're hoping actually to loop back with you as we look to get everybody staffed up or seated on that city subcommittee. And lastly, we plan to continue engaging with all of you in periodic updates to C4 as we continue throughout the project and as we reach significant milestones of the project. So I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. We really, once again, are grateful to be with you tonight. We would be happy to answer any questions you have, or if we cannot answer them here, we'll take them back and get back to you. But with that, we turn over to all of you and your questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation. I've got the, let's see, hands up. Mr. Meyer has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. It seems as though this is all focused on the urban areas, and I think that makes sense. But I want to know how, if at all, you're engaging with the rural and unincorporated areas, and how you intend to set up that subcommittee on rural areas, and just how we fit into all of that. Thank you.
I'll start off and then I'll check with Evan because I know I'm going to probably miss some of these details. This is a climate action plan for the entire county, and that absolutely includes rural and urban. when we hired the consultant that we hired, that was something we were really interested in and asked for in the RFP, was somebody who had done a climate action plan that had rural focus. And so that was a key factor in us in choosing that consultant. In looking at the rural subcommittee, we are open to looking for people who could staff that. We want to make sure we get a good mix of people on that subcommittee, including people doing farming, forestry, and other rural focus. So Eben, I know I probably missed a couple things there.
No, I think you explained it well. If it feels like this presentation is geared right now towards cities, I think that's primarily just because of the makeup of our audience. So we'd be happy to follow up with you if you have more specific questions about rural engagement, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, I should alert you to the CPO Summit, which is a way to engage more than one CPO at a time, and perhaps they can help you in filling out that rural community subcommittee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the suggestion.
Councillor Heisey.
I'm really excited to hear an update from you all on this. I'm glad that this work is going forward, and I have lots of questions, but I'm going to keep a lid on it. And just one of my questions is about the modeling and how you're going to, if that's going to include all of the cities collectively. You know, like, for example, we've already got a climate action plan. We've done the modeling. Are you going to use the modeling that we've already got, or are you going to redo an analysis for cities that have them? And then my other question is, how are you engaging with the feds? Because as we learned in September, they play an outsized role in Clackamas County, which we knew already. But when it comes to climate, I think we're all a little more aware of the role that they really play, and the management of federal lands in Clackamas County is kind of a big deal.
I'm going to pass to Eben on the modeling.
Well, yes, Councillor. So we're definitely very aware of the project in Milwaukee. Of course, I actually had the pleasure of participating on that committee, as you know, and so I think we're very interested in learning from Milwaukee's experience, in using data that Milwaukee might have available to us. We have been in touch with some of your staff on those things. But if you have some specific ideas around modeling assumptions that you think that we should be taking into account, we would really love to hear that. And I think one of the things we could certainly look at is looking at modeling a future where Milwaukee is successful in reaching its goals. You know, how does that then translate into the countywide results? And honestly, on your question about engaging with the feds, we really haven't been that focused on incorporating input from, let's say, the U.S. Forest Service or other federal agencies at this point. It's a good point, though, and I think we'll have to talk about it as within our project team.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Joe Buck.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I was late and I missed the first part, but I would just appreciate the part of the presentation I saw. In regards to like for us in the cities, I know like we have struggled in LO with just the work required, to do a greenhouse gas inventory. And I'm wondering if the county work, if that somehow is able to be translated into, our individual jurisdictions, if we're looking to establish that baseline, for our boundaries, or so that way.
I could speak to that a little bit. We commissioned a community-wide greenhouse gas inventory last year, and actually it started in 2019. And we had some real struggles with being able to track city by city and unincorporated emissions separate from each other. I see some heads nodding that maybe this isn't a surprise to some of you. There were some data sources that either were willing, but it was very difficult to get the information disaggregated, or they just really weren't willing to share at the political jurisdiction level. So I think that's a place where we could work together in making some progress. I would imagine potentially that Metro might want to be involved in that too, of course, since they have a lot of data in coming up with a streamlined inventory process that we could all benefit from.
I can actually add a little bit of detail to that. I'm Sarah Allison, I'm a sustainability analyst working on the project. And so while that's absolutely true that a lot of our data sources, we had some challenges in terms of getting data that was disaggregated to the cities initially because of the work that our consultant SSG and their modeling sub-consultant are doing. We are able to take that data and disaggregate it to the building level. And so because we are able to just count the number of buildings in different areas, that gives us a layer of information that does actually distinguish the cities. So there are some places where we were able to sort of take the data that we got and do more work to make it more applicable to the cities. So that was an exciting thing that our consultants brought.
So thank you both. Just a real quick follow up. So has the baseline inventory been established? Is it the work is done?
We have a first draft, but it is not completely vetted and finalized, but we will certainly be sharing it when it is.
Okay, great.
Kaiser Heisey again, and then Mayor Kaiser.
I'll keep it super quick. When you were talking about the subcommittees, I was really interested in that idea. I noticed that there hasn't been a lot of mention of equity in your climate action planning, and I'm wondering if you could speak to how that might show up in those subcommittees or elsewhere in your community engagement process.
I can start and then I'm going to pass off because I know it's something that's really important to us. It's important to our board and we've made it a keystone of this project. In setting the climate, the actual task force, the main task force, we have 2 community-based organizations that we've been talking with to make sure we have representation there so that the work that we're doing in the outreach is equitable. We've been talking to the tribes and we've been talking to a number of stakeholders to start that process. We also have something as part of this work is called Just Transition to make sure that when we're looking at this work, we're looking at an equity focus of how we move forward in that manner so that we're bringing everybody along with us. I know Eben and Sarah are both keenly involved in those pieces too.
Well, I'll just mention that at the outset of the project, our commissioners approved a concept that included, I believe the number was eight different criteria for success, which was sort of how we would just define a successful project at the end, including things like it needed to be meaningful, i.e., have actions that if we followed through on them, they would make a difference. But one of them was equity. And so we definitely are committed to that. Sarah might appreciate the opportunity to say a little bit more about Just Transition if we have the time.
I can talk about Just Transition for a long time, so I will keep it brief. It has been a really transformational concept for me in thinking about how equity can be applied to climate action, and it really does focus on finding ways to not leave any communities behind. One of the really interesting things about Just Transition as a concept is that it was created through a combination of frontline communities, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, and union workers, which is not the most common combination of stakeholder groups. And so they came up with some really creative core concepts and ways to really track how to make climate action meaningful at a generational scale, while also paying attention to the impacts of today. So yes, always happy to talk about Just Transition.
Mayor Kaiser.
Yeah, as a new mayor coming on to C4, I don't have any information on the survey that our city did. Is it possible to get a copy of that emailed to me?
Yeah, absolutely. We will absolutely do that for you.
I appreciate it because I'm hearing some other cities saying that possibly they don't have any record of doing the survey also. So I'd like to be able to get caught up on what was documented by our city.
Mayor, I wonder if it would be helpful if maybe we just committed to sending the results back out to everyone.
That would be great. I'd like to know what was said about our city specifically and if we actually did it.
Yeah, I'm not recalling if Malala was part of the responses. Maybe not, it looks like.
Malala was one of the 3 cities that was not able to complete the survey. So there would be an opportunity to answer those questions if you would like to, for sure.
Absolutely. If you could send it to me. Is it, you can email it to me and I can do it, or, okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sabas.
Yeah, just my question is to, I guess, Evan or our staff here, is that when it comes to scale and how fine from the aggregate standpoint, we drill down into the areas of the county. I'm sure by doing this together and having economies of scale, there's a benefit like we did with our housing analysis. But more along the lines of whether it's buildings or it's, carbon emissions or whatever it may be from vehicles. I mean, how small a scale will we be going to on really something that has a global scale, a global magnitude, right? So I'm just kind of wondering how small we go.
Well, if I could ask a follow-up question for you on that, are you thinking specifically about how our communities contribute to carbon emissions and how small of a scale we go with our emissions, or some other aspect?
Yeah, so you gave the example earlier someone did about buildings, right? We counted buildings and we got an idea. So when it comes to buildings, how small a building do we go? Do we go to each home? I mean, are we going to go to that kind of a scale?
Okay. I don't believe in general we would be going to that level. But there are some, we have data around like how many different types of buildings are in different zones within the county, fairly small zones. And I think that's the scale. We could actually, Sarah could probably bring up a map of another community. I think we have some backup slides, so we could show you a map of the greenhouse gas emissions distributed across a landscape from a prior analysis.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily advocating that we go down on small scale. I just didn't know if the science or the analysis thus far said at some certain point, there's a diminishing return on the analysis. So I just didn't know where that line was.
Correct. I don't, carbon emissions have the same impact wherever they come from. So really the point of doing some spatial analysis would probably be more to inform how to apply solutions in a strategic and creative way.
Thank you.
Mayor Pulliam.
Really fast question here, probably for Sarah. Did Sandy fill out the survey? Or are we one of the 3?
Yes, we do have a response from Sandy. So I'm happy to.
I'll track it down. I'll track it down from there. Just good to hear. Thank you so much.
As y'all know, we do a follow-up email almost every month following the C4 meeting. So I'm happy to work with the climate team here and share with everybody the response that was initially sent, and then also share out the new link that we'll create, I guess, for the survey for those who didn't take it. Just create that opportunity for everyone. I'll work with the team and get that out next week.
Thank you.
Any other questions from this group? Yes, Ms. Pratt.
I'm sorry, I updated Zoom and I don't know where to find the raise hand now. So that's the reason for the physical raised hand. I'm wondering when we're just starting in our city in Tualatin our climate action plan this year. And I'm wondering, just so we could implement some of what you're doing into our plan, is when you expect your plan to be fully implemented.
We expect to have a completed plan by January of 2023. That's our hope. But we'll be giving milestones as we go along. So it'll be we'll be able to kind of keep you updated with that information as we go through the process.
And we could share with you one-on-ones, if there's some things that would be helpful for you, maybe ideas around scope of work or something like that. And I would encourage you to connect with Lake Oswego and Milwaukee as well with their their existing plans.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Milwaukee's plan, but thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions for the group on this project?
Mayor, I have a question from the attendee group. It's also one of our alternates here, so alternate C4 member for the Hamlet group. It says Stafford is surrounded by 3 of the top 4 greenhouse gas producers in the region. What is the possibility of starting a dialogue for a region plan with the cities, Clackamas and the Stafford Hamlet? And I'll let the team respond to that. It might be one we need to punt to for an email down the road.
Yeah, I think we'd love to take this question back and provide a response via email. That would be helpful. So no, really right now what we're focused on is this entire climate action plan for the county that is up at that higher level.
Thank you. Rick, if you'd email that question to me, I can work with the team to get a response to you. Thanks.
Something else? Oh, just a thank you in the chat. Okay. Well, Cheryl, Eben and Sarah, thank you very much for coming and presenting to the C4 group. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to continued updates as this progresses, and hopefully, yeah, we'll see what we can keep improving on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right, next on the agenda is the C4 orientation and executive committee presentation. And the infamous Trent Wilson is going to take us through that.
Thanks. Always good to be infamous, I guess. So let's jump into it. We have probably the largest turnover at C4 membership that has happened as long as I've been helping facilitate C4, which is going on, so I think 6 years, maybe close to 7 years at this point. So that's been my good fortune to work with you good people. And this change is exciting as well. Lots of new faces, which means a lot of new ideas. And I think C4 has been doing a lot of cool work the last few years. I'm happy to share what some of that's looked like. And then really, this is an invitation for y'all to continue that work as y'all want to do it. And so, but I know with new faces, it's kind of hard to jump into a new group at times. And I've said this a few times over the last couple of months that we are, I would provide this orientation to you today. So let me jump right into it. Hopefully you see the big screen, C4 Coordinating Committee Orientation, March 4, 2021. So what I hope to do here today is just really give you a quick rundown of a short history of C4, what C4 is, some of the acronyms that we use here in C4 because we use a lot of them. And what I would just invite everybody to do is this meeting, the next meeting, or any meeting, if we're using too many acronyms, if I'm using too many acronyms, or the staff team that we bring in, stop us, because I think, it's especially for the public who might watch this later, if they watch it later, it's a good opportunity to help everybody understand what's going on here at the county. So let's jump into C4 orientation. This is the 20th anniversary for C4. It's been around since 2001, and it was founded to promote partnership between the county and its local partners. I think a big piece of this too, we often talk about at C4, or the members often talk about, is to create something that is similar to what Washington County had for many years before C4 was created. And Washington County's coordinating committee is a little different because they have transportation dollars that they specifically are tasked to distribute amongst their cities. So it looks a little different than what our C4 looks like, or what our coordinating committee looks like. And because of that, ours looks much more like how to coordinate around issues that are much broader than just transportation. And I think Washington County's coordinating committee has had similar evolution, but it's made our coordinating committee pretty unique and it's created also a diverse group of membership here as well. And so what we do here at C4 is these are the 4 tasks outlined in the bylaws to enhance coordination, that's in the name, and cooperation between the jurisdictions and beyond. We have more than just jurisdictions here at C4. Establish unified positions on land use and transportation plans. Those are the big 2, right? And then beyond that, provide a forum for issues of mutual benefit and interest. So those beyond land use and transportation. And then also to promote unified positions and discussions at the state and regional level. So this really is an opportunity for Clackamas and its cities and its partners to come together and say, hey, as a group, we feel like this is a good position or not for those communities within Clackamas County. So who is C4? And here's this hopefully helpful map to who C4 is. So we got the big C4 group in the middle, and everything kind of orbits around that for us. At the top in the red is the executive committee, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But the executive committee, in a nutshell, for C4, they guide the agenda. They get feedback from C4 and they say, all right, we're hearing from the members that this is what they want to talk about. Let's get a presentation on that topic so we can have the next conversation. And over on the left, you see these orange sort of colored buttons. These are the membership groups. We have a contingent of Clackamas County. There's the metro or cities within the metro boundary. There are the cities outside of the metro boundary. There are a few special districts that make up the membership. And then there are several ex officio non-voting seats as well. And C4 has several subcommittees. There's a cities subcommittee, a non-cities subcommittee. One I left out here, sorry guys, is the rural cities subcommittee. Those are subcommittees that really haven't met. Honestly, as long as I've been here, I think the rural cities group has gotten together once or twice just as needed. But one that does meet regularly is the Metro subcommittee. And that's because, honestly, Metro has these two policy bodies, JPACT, transportation stuff, and IMPACT, land use, housing, urban growth boundary stuff. We'll get into that more. And they have monthly meetings as well, or regular meetings, as it were. And because we have many city seats and county seats who serve on those groups, the Metro subcommittee is able to convene every month to prepare for those meetings. And so it's been a good opportunity to utilize this existing group and benefit from just regular recurring meetings to prepare for that coordination. So all these things together, you can kind of see there's a lot going on. There are a lot of moving pieces, but hopefully this gives you a good, quick, easy way of looking at it. One thing that we hear often is like, how close is C4 tied to the county? And I'm a county staff person. We have county commissioners on this group, but you know, in the bylaws, there's not like a reporting up or down to the Board of County Commissioners. It is a pseudo advisory board group, but that's not necessarily spelled out in the bylaws. It really is a coordinating committee that benefits all of our agencies and stakeholders. And so we do see it as an opportunity, not just for advisory to the county Board of Commissioners, but even to those cities who participate here and other stakeholders as well. So it's a mutual benefit for everybody. So a little bit of a deeper dive in who the membership is. You can see in Clackamas County over here, the Board of Commissioners, hamlets, CPOs. In the bylaws, we do allow for villages, but so I kept it here, but also there are no existing villages within Clackamas County right now. So if they were to come back, there would be a seat for them here at C4. The metro area cities, and those are listed out here. The non-metro area cities, so the rural cities, are listed there. Special districts with fire, sanitary, and water. And then we have ex officio or non-voting seats. So it's Metro, the community member for IMPACT, Port of Portland. And then we have 2 transit seats, one for urban transit and one for rural transit. And it's a big group. And so I would say, again, compared to like Washington County, that's just the mayors of Washington County. And so compare that membership body to this group here, and it's much more diverse and much more focused on making sure that everybody sort of is able to coordinate. So jumping into some of these committees a little bit, we have the executive committee. As I mentioned, they set the agendas for C4, and they really do, just having worked with them for a long time now, they really do seek the direction from C4 to prioritize the agenda topics. They want to hear from y'all what goes on the agenda. So it's a lot of coordination up and down to make sure that what comes to these meetings has a lot of input from you, the group. The Metro subcommittee, as I mentioned, there's a lot of text here. So I like to sort of refer to the Metro subcommittee meeting as a pre-IMPACT, pre-JPAC meeting. They get together, they look at those agendas at IMPACT and JPAC, and they say, what do we need to prepare for? What do we need to go in, and what do we need to coordinate on so that our voice, our collective voice in Clackamas County is represented at those tables. There are non-JPAC IMPACT topics that come there, and we really try to focus on making sure that those are issue specific to happen within the growth boundary and the metro growth boundary. And if the policy area creeps out of the metro growth boundary, we try to make sure it stays here at C4 so it can have that rural input or non-metro input. And then C4 Metro is not a voting body. None of the subcommittees are. anything that they talk about at C4 Metro or any other subcommittee, if it were to meet, is recommended for a vote back at the C4 body. So you might recall that we did that in February. The C4 Metro subcommittee had an issue brought before them to recommend that smart transit was put into the JPAC bylaws to be a member. And then that came to the C4 body and y'all voted on that back in February. So there's an example of how that's worked. And then you have a transportation staff committee. It's called CTAC. If you have a city, if you're one of our city people, then you have transportation staff who is invited to this meeting. They meet monthly and they collaborate on many of the topics that end up coming to the C4 or C4 Metro meetings. So they are also coordinated on this. And very recently, we've started our land use and planning group getting together so that they have some coordination. Looks a little different, but it's up and coming. But the CTAC group is specifically called out within your bylaws. The land use group is not. And then the C4 retreat. That was not one of the buckets in the big map a minute ago. But historically, in the days before the world we know now as COVID world, we used to meet annually at the resort at the mountain, and we would have a retreat. It was a 2-day retreat. We kind of, left our homes. We'd hang out together. We'd create opportunities for social networking and also dive into some of the bigger topics that just take longer to get through than what we normally have for the 1.5 to 2 hour C4 meetings that we do once a month. I think y'all can appreciate it's tough to get through some of these things in tight timelines. And so these retreats, they just create new opportunities or different opportunities to have bigger discussions on bigger policy topics that everyone's coordinating on. We also use that time to sort of help set the priorities for C4 for the coming year. So it helps me and the executive committee come up with the agenda for the meetings for about 12 to 18 months. Programs to know, where C4 discussions come to life. And it really is true. Like what you talk about here moves a lot of discussions at these regional tables. And so I've mentioned them already, and I'm already using the acronym, so I apologize for that. But JPACT is the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. So this is Metro's transportation body. It's a lot of elected officials there. I think they have a couple of non-elected officials, and they consider transportation needs in the region. And I'm using very generic terms here, but they have a staff committee also called TPAC. Many of them monitor or watch these meetings too, so that they can stay coordinated with you and know how to help those members from Clackamas County who serve on the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, or JPAC, and support you as y'all go into those meetings. And similar to the transportation side, Metro has this land use and also housing and also urban growth boundary broad-based policy table called MPAC, or the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. And it also has a technical advisory committee of staff who support those MPAC members. And then at a bigger level, a little more macro, here are some more acronyms that we use. The OTC is the Oregon Transportation Commission. We talk about them a lot because they are a policy body that helps guide the work of ODOT, the Oregon Department of Transportation. And then on a more closer to home level is the R1 Act, or the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. And that's made up very similarly to how C4 is made up, or how JPACT or others are made up. It's a collection of representatives that are kind of diverse across the region. For the R1 Act in particular, that's our area of Commission on Transportation. It includes the entire Clackamas County, most of Washington County, I think all of Multnomah County, I believe, and all of Hood River County. And so it's kind of unique that it has Hood River in there, but it represents the more ODOT focused transportation conversations for our region. And so they handle things like the state transportation improvement plan and funding for those reasons, and funding in some of those areas as well. There are way more acronyms, and we'll get into them as we approach them. I mean, I think those are some pretty standard ones that we deal with here at C4 often. So I'll leave it there, and we'll take the other ones in turn. Here are some achievements that C4 has covered in the past. And so since 2014, since I've been working on C4 with C4, you have created a countywide housing needs assessment, and that's no small feat. That took several years to accomplish. You created a small local land use staff team to put the work together, and then you worked with the county to go out to the state and say, hey, we need to support city involvement on this so that those cities who were not within the metro growth boundary could be compliant with goal 10, because goal 10 is expensive to do on the timelines that they ask for it. So that was a huge step. And I think Clackamas County was the first city to do something like that, to do a countywide housing needs assessment. And since then, the state has tried to fund more similar projects. And so C4 would be the first of a big group of 36 counties to do something like that, which is really cool. Multiple regional and state transportation grant funding coordination. A lot of those opportunities come to the C4 table for bigger discussions, because there's very little money that goes into transportation grants. And there are 16 cities in Clackamas County, if you count those smaller cities and the sliver of Portland that's in Clackamas County, plus Clackamas County. And we're all trying to get the same very small bucket of funding with everybody else who's applying for it. And so in the past, C4 used to kind of go scattershot at some of these things. But now the C4 has done a good job of saying, let's be more strategic. Let's look at these together. Let's look at needs and what's in line and start creating a queue of opportunities so that we can support each other rather than fight each other when there's so little funding around the area. The county vehicle registration fee. This is something that there's been a lot of iterations on how to fund transportation initiatives in Clackamas County, including a recent vote for a gas tax back in, I think, 16, 15, and then other iterations of trying to do transportation funding in the past. But most recently, as y'all know, the county passed a vehicle registration fee a year and a half ago. And that happened because of a pretty heavy, I think it happened because of a pretty heavy discussion that happened at the C4 retreat in 2018 that led to cities in the county being energized towards moving towards having some solutions on transportation funding gaps. And so because of C4, that retreat in particular, and some energy that went into city engagement, I think the vehicle registration fee came out of that. And also that came out of that is the Strategic Investment Fund, a small bucket of money, a million and some change, that C4 helps to determine how that's used. And so we'll have opportunities to talk about that in the future. Housing topics are now a nexus of transportation land use topic priorities here. So rather than just say, well, we do at C4 transportation and land use things, C4 has said, actually housing is in between all of that and related to all those things. And it's a big issue for us here in the region. So let's have those housing conversations here at C4. And so that's a little newer for this group. There's been a lot of education on it. I think we can use some more. Right now at the next C4 meeting, we'll have some housing discussions. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow here for C4 and do some coordinated work on it. And then we have two major infrastructure projects that our communities are continuing to fight for and advocate for. That's the I-205 bottleneck and the Sunrise Gateway Corridor and project. Those things are always at the front of our mind. They're very expensive projects, and it takes a lot of time to move those types of things. But C4 has been at the table through most of it. And again, I feel like because of the coordination that happens here at C4, those projects continue to move forward. And so I'd say with that, welcome to C4. That's the quick 101, as it were. And as you can see, the lights have turned off here at the county offices. So it might be a little dark behind me, so I apologize. And I think from there, happy to answer any questions. I think I saw that maybe someone from the audience had a question, but maybe that's gone down since then. Mayor Pulliam.
A couple things. One is, I wasn't here for it, but I've heard about legendary discussions about our bylaws and our rules. So very big accomplishment for this group getting through that. And then I hear Washington County has all the money and the mayors are the ones that get to spend it. That was news to me as well. Let me know if we can adopt some of that. I think that's great. That's just my humor for this evening, nothing else.
What Washington County has is very unique, not only to the region, but also to the state. And they have, I think it's about $37 million that comes out of property taxes that no other county in the state can leverage because of Measure 5 and Measure 50 that was implemented in the mid 90s. And yeah, so they have a very complicated, but also unique process on how they make decisions for where that funding goes. And the body, the Washington County Coordinating Committee, is made up of mayors, but it's not as simple as they get to make the decisions. There's some technical processes to it as well. Commissioner Savis.
Yeah, well, I don't want to show my age, but back when I had hair and it was darker, 20 years ago when we started C4, I just want to just build on this. Trent did a great job of giving a great overview, but not only did we want to emulate Washington County's coordinating committee, but we also wanted to get basically a bucket of funds, and now we call that the Strategic Investment Fund. But I think we had our sights on a larger amount of money, and it's not about the money so much as what we wanted to do with it. And what we really wanted to do with it was try to keep up with growth. I mean, the County Commissioner Bill Kennemer at the time started two things. One was citizen involvement, and the outgrowth of that was Hamlet's Villages and the CPOs. But on the infrastructure side, it was concurrency, and out of that came C4. So it was all about infrastructure and about meeting the growth needs. And what Washington County does with those dollars is they really direct that towards the development and the roads that are needed, the infrastructure that's needed to continue to meet the demands for building out those lands so that they have the industrial, the housing, all those pieces, and they're able to keep up. And when I go out there, and I've done, I do business out there, or did business out there in my earlier years. It's always just mind blowing what they have done with those dollars and what they do. So I just want to just kind of put that out there. That is one of the long-standing goals, is to get a sizable amount of dollars that kind of keep up with some of the growth. And recently we had, Wilsonville had the expansion of their Frog Pond area, and out of that's anticipated growth. And that growth rolls into unincorporated Clackamas County, Stafford Road, for example. And had we had substantial dollars, and we did like Washington County, we would have improved that road, right? And it would have been a shared cost. Instead, there is no money to fix Stafford Road. It still remains a rural road you can't really walk on safely, with deep culverts. And so we're losing ground as we keep on expanding on the edges, and we just don't have the dollars to keep up. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. That was just something that's been a long time goal. And that conversation really kicked on pretty strong in 2011, in 2012, and into 2013. That's where the discussion came up about a VRF or a gas tax or utility fee or a property tax levy, SDCs. We looked at a lot of things, but I'll just stop there and just want to share that one little bit of insight.
Thanks. Commissioner Schrader.
You can see I have a companion here showing me a little affection tonight. In any case, I want to echo what Paul said. C4 started in 2001. I came on board on 2003, and we worked really hard to make it a very functional organization, because we saw how Washington County was largely just kind of out competing with us on multiple fronts. And not only did it first start with cities, with folks like Alice Norris and some of the folks that have been here for quite a while. We also revolutionized it by allowing our community planning organizations to come in. And this was even before that we had worked on the Hamlet and Village concept. I do remember an anecdote where the cities weren't real happy with me because I kind of stuck up for the CPOs. This is for Mr. Meyer here, okay? And I was always in trouble because I told the CPOs how much I love our city folk. And then I told the CPOs, how much, we're all one group. So we needed to get through that. But that was a very interesting time. And I remember being at a meeting, and the mayors were pushing back. And I just said, you just got to trust my judgment with this one. In the end, this is going to be a really good collaboration, because the unincorporated areas often, there are rural areas, there are food shed, there are agricultural areas, there are nurseries, and our kind of urban communities or our cities, those areas, we have to be able to cooperate together to get what we need for transportation, land use, and the other things. So it was quite a history. And Paul and I have worked together at least that long, haven't we? I think we were on M as well as C4 together. So it's nice to be back. I guess it's my long-winded way of saying it's nice to be back with all of you and with the mayors and our community planning organizations. Thanks. Okay.
Thanks, Commissioner. Well, as I mentioned, I don't see any other questions, so I'll keep moving. As I mentioned, there are several new members here, and I think some of those have been introduced in the past, but I mean, just real quickly, raise your hand if you're a new member to C4 this year here in 2021. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that's a big change. And we have 5 new mayors, or we're about to have a 5th new mayor here in once Oregon City does their mayor vote. So that, you know, that type of change here in Clackamas County is, it's been a long time since we've seen stuff like that. And so I really would just encourage this group here, you know, the agendas that we put together and that we submit to y'all, it's really built by you. And so this work is designed by you and moved by you. And I look to you to sort of help me know what this group wants to coordinate on. And the executive committee looks to that direction as well, which brings me to the really important piece that we do here at this annual meeting here in March, which is to announce who is going to serve on the executive committee for C4 for the next year. And there's an urban city seat, there is a rural city seat, there is a CPO and Hamlet shared seat, a fire district seat, and then a sewer and water district seat, as well as a commissioner seat. So Commissioner Savas, I think, is going to continue as the county seat unless the board has made a different decision that I was unaware of, which is possible, but maybe not. And then I want to leave it up to the, I would like you all to make your own announcement. The cities, the rural group and the urban group have both caucused via email and also offline to make a decision on this. And then I can announce a few other changes as well. Councilor Heisey, are you making the announcement or do you have a question?
I just wanted to underline and clarify, because I don't know that I understood this initially, that if someone has, you know, if you have a burning desire to have something be on the agenda for a meeting, Trent is available. That's what I've started doing, is if I see something coming up, I just email Trent and he gets it to the executive committee to discuss whether or not it goes on the agenda. That was all.
That is correct. Please let me know how I can help you. Every time. My availability is my best ability that I can offer to this group. And so I try to make sure that that's here for this group. Yeah, Councilor or Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, thanks. So the urban cities had a little bit of an email exchange about our representative, and I believe we were all in general agreement for Gladstone Mayor Tammy Stemple to continue representing us. She's done great. This is how easy it went last year, and it went really easy this year. And so thank you, Mayor Stemple, for representing us, and she's going to continue for the next year.
Thank you. I enjoy it very, very much.
Thanks, Mayor Hodson.
Yeah, so the rural cities, it wasn't as smooth. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth because, like, you know, all 4 of us really want that opportunity to, you know, lead the rural cities. And so at the end, I think I got everyone to acquiesce, and I will retain being the rural cities representative to the exec committee. It was close though.
And then Mr. Myers, you and Mr. Keith, I believe, had some exchange to talk about who will serve in your seat as well.
Yeah, we did. Thank you. And I have their support to continue on for another period of time. So I'm going to be continuing with it. I think it's a really important role. I appreciate having an informal access to the commissioners and to the other mayors that are on the executive committee. I've appreciated your time and patience with me as I come up to speed on how all this works. So I'll look forward to it.
Thank you. And then I think the fire seat is, we only have 1 fire seat. So that's sort of de facto. And then we have the special district seat, and that's been Mr. Gornick for as it is.
For my caucus of 1, I've selected myself to remain on the executive committee.
There you go. I appreciate it. So the next step then is when the executive committee meets again, which is Monday. I haven't sent out the meeting announcement just in case there were changes, but it's Monday night at the normal time. So that's already, since it's continuation, should already be on your calendar. And for everybody else who doesn't know this, the executive committee meets on the 2nd Monday of every month. So we did it that way so that it happens pretty close to after the C4 meeting to do a debrief and figure out the next meeting agenda. At that meeting, we'll open up an opportunity for them to determine who will be the other co-chair at C4. And per the bylaws, one of the co-chairs is the county seat. The other co-chair is not the county seat. And so there are 5 other members, and they'll have that discussion on Monday, and we'll bring that information back to you at the April meeting. One other change real quick before I finish up here, which is the transit districts have sort of had a handshake agreement amongst themselves over the last, as long as I've been doing this, that every year they switch. And so there's an urban seat that's shared between SMART and TriMet, and every year they switch who sits at the table. And then the same is true for a rural seat. There's more than 2 in our rural communities. And so that's Canby, that's South Clackamas, that's Mount Hood Express, and I'm forgetting one.
Sandy, are you including us with
Sandy? Sandy,
Come
thank you.
on, the
Sandy.
best, man. Let's
I
go.
know, my mind was doing it a geography match, and when I said Mount Hood, I was already over there. I was like, oh, who did I forget? Thank you. So Sandy and Mount Hood, they both are very close in their district. So it has been South Clackamas last year. This year, the rotation is moving into the Mount Hood Express group. So I don't see them here tonight, but they will be a regular sitting member here. And that just means that the other members are alternates. And so I bring them in from time to time if their other person is not here. So that's why Dwight's here today. It's been Tom, who is in the audience with TriMet. So they are always good partners here and good members with us here at C4. But wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that change as well. And that is it for me. Thank you, and happy first meeting of your C4 year.
Thank you, Trent. Appreciate that. Next up is the conversation about the county vehicle registration fee update. I think, Trent, do you want to tackle that one, or do you want maybe one of the commissioners to give that overview?
Yeah, let me just share with you why it's on the agenda, which is that it's a topic that's been going on here at the county level, and it's a topic that's been, I think, close to home for city members as well as C4 members. And so we anticipated, and the executive committee anticipated, that this would be a conversation that many of you would want to have. And so rather than packing this agenda with a topic that was not this, we went ahead and just made space for this. So that's all that this is. I have no agenda. There is no agenda for this except to give you time to talk about it if you want to talk about it. But I would punt to Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader, who probably have the most recent context because they had a conversation about this on Tuesday.
Commissioner Savas, do you want to give us an update on that conversation in your guys' work session and where that's at this point?
Well, yeah. Well, so Mayor Hodson, I think you were around in 2013, were you not, on C4?
I was indeed. It was interesting that Trent said 20 years. I think I've been on here 10 of those. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I've been here the whole run, but I think 2013 was, I think it was June of 2013 when, as I mentioned earlier, that we were working on this pot of money, which we now call the Strategic Investment Fund, or the concept of a pot of money. And originally it was a sharing, it was put out there as something predicated on that it was something that would go to the vote of the people. And primarily, in hindsight, it was a good idea because part of the rationale was, if we did something, we would either have an IGA or IGAs amongst us to keep it solid, and also something that really couldn't be repealed very easily. And so here we are now with something that didn't go now, that is subject to a repeal, whether it happens in my term as a commissioner or it happens in the future, who knows? But here we are. And anyhow, the goal of the bucket of money, as I mentioned earlier, was to get a larger bucket of money and to have a sharing, so that basically if we did like a VRF, the topic was, or a gas tax, that there'd be some skin in the game from the cities or a portion of that, and skin in the game from the county, and that bucket of money would be combined for those growth related needs and so forth. So 2013 came along, Mayor Hodson, maybe some others who were there at the time, and Chair Ludlow and Commissioner Tootie Smith came to the meeting, surprisingly came to the meeting, and decided that they were going to just take that whole project away from C4 and do it on their own, that they could get it on their own, and we shouldn't be talking about capacity needs. We ought to be talking about maintenance. And so I won't get totally in the weeds. So they had an extra vote from Commissioner Bernard at the time, and so therefore there was a majority to move it away from C4, unfortunately, and that created a lot of havoc amongst us. It really did, and it really hasn't gone away. I think there's still some hard feelings that I hear from time to time that bubble up from the cities, rightfully so, about what happened back then, because I think we had a good group of people doing some good work. We had a lot of camaraderie. I was really excited about that particular effort in the times, but obviously they put a gas tax on the ballot. It failed. Prior to the gas tax, there was a measure on the ballot, an advisory measure. Should the county go out if the county goes out for a vote in the near term for transportation funding, should it go to a vote of the people? And the answer was obviously yes. It was like 70 some odd percent. And then subsequent to that was the gas tax vote, which failed. And there were advocates that were saying, no, it shouldn't be a gas tax, it should be a VRF. You need to get the electric vehicles, need to pay their fair share. And, I won't get in the weeds on that, but there was a little bit of back and forth on that. So, obviously, times change, the board changes again, Commissioner Bernard becomes Chair Bernard. And, as many of you may know, and I'll just repeat it for those who are new here or not aware of that, there was an effort launched in about 2017 to get the public outreach going and the C4 involvement going, and discussion about implementing a VRF. And so 2 years of work, folks, 2 years, started in February of 2017, and the board voted in February of 2019. So almost precisely two years went by. So a lot of outreach, a lot of efforts on what we're going to do with it. My discomfort with it, I'm just going to be totally honest and straight up. My issue with it was it didn't reflect what our earlier work was, and that the bucket was smaller than we anticipated. I was thinking at least a few million. Let's just say the state formula is that if the county implemented a VRF, 60% goes to the county, 40% goes to the cities. We talked about combinations earlier on between 2011 and 2013. If we did that, would the county put in 20% and the cities put in 20%, making up 40%? So the $1 million, a little over $1 million we have today, would have been $4 million if we put in 10% or 15%, and you can do the math. So that was the concept. And we didn't get that. We didn't get there. So I had heartburn about that. The bucket of money to meet the growth needs was too small, and that the skin in the game should have been shared, and a number of other details. So, if you all want to have that conversation about how we grapple with this going forward, great. And having your input here today would be great. I know that some of the cities, some of you all have sent us letters, and I appreciate that. I read every one of them, and I get the message. But reality is that, we're really about one vote away from, whether it's a vote in my term or a vote in the future, we're one vote away from losing the VRF, so to speak. And even though I don't like it, the structure, the methodology, the formula, the fact that it's not enough, I'm concerned about that money going away, because we do need the transportation funding. Okay, I get the point of the voters should have a vote on it. But if we repealed everything every time there's a change of the guard, if you will, and repeal everything that a new board doesn't like, and your city councils, if you did that, we'd be just going in circles year after year after year. So it doesn't make sense. And to take monies away, and we get $11.8 million. I mean, that's $11.8 million of projects that touch every community in the county. So, I think big picture that the most secure way to make sure this doesn't happen again is somehow find some mechanism, at least, to put something in the future on the ballot, in a way maybe that favors, where we anticipate the electorate would favor that, and be an affirmation to continue on with this, because it wouldn't be an increase. I mean, no one's talking about an increase that I know of, even though there's rumors of that. But once it's done, once it's voted on by the people, it's going to be very difficult to repeal, right? Let's just face it. I mean, it just is. So here we are today. I've made this statement. I said it twice on Tuesday. I said it today. I just want to just tell you what my statement was on this. I said a lot, but one in particular. I am interested in hearing from key stakeholders on a potential repeal of the VRF and the concept of putting a more effective VRF methodology forward that could include a ballot measure. So basically, to break that down and break the code down, I want to hear from everyone. I want to understand everything. And I think that 2 years of effort of outreach should be at least I don't want to say duplicated for 2 years, but somehow touch everyone and reach everyone that we talked about and get it and get out there. And hopefully those folks can at some point in time come and speak to us, the county commissioners, however organized or whenever we do that, to express our thoughts and ideas about that. And I imagine that Chair Smith and others might bring their folks to come and speak to us. So I see this, this playing out for months to come in the future. I think it'll take several months, if not a year or more, especially with COVID, to really do all that outreach. But my question to you all is tonight, are you interested? I know that some people may not have the patience for it, but if we can get ourselves in a better place, it may be worthwhile. If we can get ourselves in something that will be more difficult to repeal, it may be worth our while. And so I'm going to lay that out there. I want to hear from you tonight. I've said enough. I'm happy to take any questions, but go for it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before we get too headlong into that, I want to give Commissioner Schrader an opportunity to weigh in and give her thoughts on the Tuesday work session.
I really like working with you. You know that. My concern is that, like I said, revisiting what the previous board has done, number one. Number two, the outreach that was done for this particular vehicle registration fee was pretty significant. No, we didn't refer it to the voters, but we worked with all of you. We worked with our business community, the North Clackamas Chamber. I'll be talking to Laura Edmonds tomorrow morning. We worked with the Oregon City Chamber. We worked with the business alliances. And one of the reasons we involved our business community is because they know that the value of having a robust transportation system particularly for connections between our rural and our urban areas. And one of the things that I've always thought was great about this one, it was projects that really, really helped every corner of the county. So nobody didn't get a project that they needed, either for safety, for access, congestion relief, so on and so forth. And the issue I'm grappling with personally is the fact that staff is already down the road of actually contracting for those projects. So basically, this would be a pullback. And I will tell you, I voted for it because I've got this, I'm kind of long in the tooth in this county. I had been through all those votes with folks. And no matter what we seem to do, Bill Kennemer was a champion, actually, when I first came on board of, just basically saying, hey, this tax is just going to cost you like maybe as much of a latte, kind of a thing. And consistently, they have not gone very well. So if folks wanted to go to a vote, I will tell you from my experience, this is a pretty fee and tax averse county. And sometimes I think you just got to bite the bullet and make the decision. And because of the years of involvement I've had with trying to get something passed, and now my concern is that it's almost too far down the road to untangle. And it's we could go back for more. I don't disagree with Commissioner Savas. I suppose that's an option, but I think it will be a very sticky, messy process. And I think that projects that we already have relatively ready to go are going to be jeopardized. So I don't know what to say. The outreach was done by Shelley Perini, who is the master of community building and outreach. So we didn't really leave anybody behind with that, I don't think. It's just my opinion. And it's one of the first, and I'm not a big tax supporter. I understand this county, but our roads need maintenance. And we keep deferring the opportunity, and our county doesn't have the same level of funding as Multnomah or Washington County. Washington County in particular, because I worked with Chair Bryan at the time on numerous issues, and he was the one, he was a Republican, who realized that having those adequate resources for the roads would help Washington County be the economic engine of the area. And he pretty much succeeded with that. So I learned a lot from Tom Bryan, and sometimes you just kind of have to take it on the chin with a vote, I guess. But it's whatever you folks decide to do. I would hate to see this dismantled at this point. That's just my personal opinion on this. So, okay.
I just want to make one small clarification. I am not suggesting that we raise the VRF fee at all. Let me make that perfectly clear. There's a rumor out there to that effect. I don't know where it came from, but there's no one has proposed that I know of increasing the amount of dollars of the VRF, nor am I. So I want to make that perfectly clear.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Schrader, thank you. Commissioner Heisey.
First, I want to thank both of you for your leadership on this. I know this has been hard. I know that it has been years of work by staff. I know you had difficult conversations from the dais as the commission, and I really appreciate your votes on Tuesday. And you are advocating for us in this. I hear you, Commissioner Savas, that the breakdown is not quite what you wanted it to be, but I appreciate you supporting it anyway. Nothing has changed in the past year or year and a half, however long it's been. We just got the first tranche of money as cities, right? Within the past few months. Nothing has changed. We don't suddenly have miles fewer roads in Clackamas County. We still have more road miles than any other county in the tri-state area. We still have a dearth of funding mechanisms to support those roads. We still have the 2 years of outreach work that you all did. So I don't see that this is suddenly a time when things are fundamentally different in this county in such a way that it should go to a ballot. I understand your concerns about it being vulnerable in its current iteration, but I also think that the single best way to get voter support is to let it work for a few years. And so people can see, oh, this is the difference between having a very modest VRF in place that will fix these problems that we have hated for decades, and not having it. Let the voters see that it really has a value. Choose projects that are highly visible and will reach the most tax-averse neighborhoods of the county. Be strategic in how those dollars are spent. And in the meantime, keep thinking about whether there's a way to package this so that it would be more palatable to the voters. But in the meantime, please leave it in place. Right now, the way it worked in Milwaukee is we planned our CIP in ways that have some of those dollars embedded in so many different projects. If that money goes away, we're screwed. I mean, we will have to completely redo our CIP to figure out how to move forward and which projects to cancel or put off, because it's woven everywhere. We are not set up to just turn on a dime and no longer have this funding available to us. And I will also say, as an EV owner and driver, the time is coming, and it's coming faster than anyone anticipates. And I know you're used to hearing those of us who advocate for these things and going, yeah, right. But really, the landscape is transforming. Gas tax is not a stable revenue source. We need to have more than one or two legs on the stool for funding our transportation projects in the county and in our cities. And this is something that Blumenauer pointed out when he spoke to JPAC. You know, he spoke to the very real need to diversify funding for transportation projects because gas taxes are not going to be the way of the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Buck.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I mean, and thank you, Councilor Heisey, for those comments. I mean, I agree with everything that that you said. Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader, really want to echo the thanks of your continued, support for the VRF. I mean, we're talking about such a basic function, of our government service here to provide safe transportation. And I think that we've seen a real, inability of the county to maintain this very, very, very basic service over the years. And then I don't think there's a single jurisdiction sitting here in the room that is so flush with transportation funds that they're able to accomplish even a portion of their transportation system plans. We're all kind of in that in the same boat, really making decisions using these limited resources for this infrastructure. Where our jurisdiction is situated, we're a mix of city roads and county roads. And I live on a county road, and they are all in horrible shape, not even somewhat bad. I mean, I'm horrible shape. So unless there's another plan to fund this basic function of government, I don't see how we go forward with really removing this modest form of investment in a basic service, unless there's a plan in place to replace it, or there's other resources. This is a huge investment especially in economic development. I mean, our business community, our community strongly supports. I'd say LO mirrors a lot of Clackamas County in its kind of longstanding opposition to fees and taxes. But one thing this community agrees upon is the importance of investment in its transportation infrastructure. It goes across party lines. It goes across all different segments of the community. I mean, it's really something everyone believes in. And I think that's probably true throughout the rest of the county as well. So I would urge you to, stay the course. Councilor Heisey's points are very, very, very good. Show people results, for the money that they're spending, because it really is stuff that touches so many members of our Clackamas community, and really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Buck. Appreciate that. Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Trent. I also wanted to thank Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader for your comments and your leadership over many years on this. I remember seeing some of the prior presentations put forward on ways to fund the roads, and was glad when this was finally passed. And so I also really think the points made by Councilor Heisey are very good. I think messaging is really important in this, and I'm thinking about the difficulty of getting a ballot measure passed, especially in the days of social media and how easy it is to spin negative tales and I would call it, just crazy things to say. I mean, somebody that made a statement in opposition to this at our city council meeting said we don't want to have this vehicle registration fee because we don't think the money would be spent wisely, which is just a thing someone can say, because we have processes to spend the money wisely. And I think maybe we need to also, in our messaging, point out how we save money for our taxpayers by taking care of our roads, and instead of waiting until they all need to be stripped down and started over at a much higher expense. So this is not a way to save people money. It's a way to give people higher vehicle repair costs for their frequent front end alignments. And it's a way to make us pay top dollar at emergency rates when we have no choice but to repair a road. So I think a messaging campaign is really important on this. And I like the idea of I'm going to use that in Wilsonville. We also have a couple of really high-profile projects that the citizens have been wanting for many years that are being partly funded by this. And as we all know, it takes so long to get a road project started. And once we get it started and know that this funding can help with it, we want to keep going. We don't want to back up and go back into road degradation mode. So thanks again. I think we should continue on boldly.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Mr. Grunke.
I'm going to break my own rule and say some things tonight rather than just listen. Having run a municipality myself years ago, I know I speak for all of you. It's the time to fix the roads is before they really need fixing. I don't know what the latest number is, but I know it's multiple times as cost to redo a road after it's gone past the point where resurfacing would do the job. What I'm going to say next, I thought about a good deal. I probably shouldn't be saying it, but I'm going to say it because I know neither Commissioner Savas nor Commissioner Schrader can say it. So I will say it, and I'm not speaking for them. I'm only speaking for myself. I think what we're facing here is a problem with a campaign promise, which for some reason, a member of the commission feels has to be kept no matter what the damage is to the county or to the county's assets. I think the other thing that bothers me so much is we seem to be facing a situation where we have forgotten the fact that we are not in a direct democracy, that decisions are not made by those who speak the loudest or raise their voices the most. And I'm afraid that we're allowing ourselves to be governed by people who feel that because they yell louder than anyone else, they must speak for the majority of people. And I wish some members of our commission would not look at things that way. That is what bothers me more than anything else.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. Mr. Meyer.
I would not want to trade what we've worked hard to accomplish, what you guys have worked hard to accomplish for a vote, because I'm afraid we'd lose it. The chatter in the county, rural unincorporated areas out here with the common people, nobody wants to pay the tax. They don't like it, and they'd like to see it go away. But when I explained to people in Redland that it's Bradley and Redland Road, and it's Ferguson and Redland Road that are going to benefit from the dollars coming in, their mood changes. So county transportation has done a very good job of scattering these projects throughout. And there is almost in every community here an example of how that money will be beneficially spent in a way that the individual people can see this, the people who would otherwise vote against it. So I think it is better to work up a campaign to make sure that people understand the money and how it's coming, that you can go to the county website and see where the money is going to go. It's all extremely transparent. We have a really good system. I appreciate it. I'm glad to have it on behalf of the unincorporated areas. It's the only way we have to improve the roads out here, and they do need it. So thank you for that work. And I just prefer to stay where we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I appreciate all your comments. And those of you who perhaps listened to the Tuesday session, if you haven't, I would encourage you to listen. But for those of you who did listen, you probably picked up on a couple things that I said with regards to the future of transportation funding. We're in the paradigm of transportation funding is about to change, and we should be in front of it and not really be behind the eight ball in reacting to what I'm concerned about is a change in which the dollars that come our ways currently, I'll call it the 50-30-20 split. So for those of you who don't know what that is, the dollars we get, the cities and the county get from the state gets 50% of that cut, the county gets 30% of that cut, and the cities get 20%. So that 50-30-20 split, I'm concerned that that's going to change. And I'm concerned that we may not even have control of our debt, how we spend those dollars and how we direct them. As we know, the federal government right now is going to change. They're going to take their federal gas tax portion, and and they constantly do this. They'll put different criteria around it. I expect a lot of more carbon related type projects or carbon friendly related projects. And that's all good. I mean, that's part of our program and as part of the federal requirements. I totally get that. But the takeaway of some of the basic stuff or the substitution of those dollars or the allocation of the dollars will be much stronger that way and less towards the basic essential infrastructure. Portland, very well developed, very well built out. They got everything for the most part. Washington County is way ahead of us. We're still down to 1-lane country roads that have deep culverts and shoulders and no safe bike lanes and no walkways. I mean, we're in a very precarious situation, but the funding streams to fund that are dwindling and they're going to go away. And it's too bad, Clackamas County, you weren't there in the beginning or you didn't get your fair share. Too bad, so sad. We're moving on. And the metropolitan areas are, and we are in a state where this is driven, virtually all of our dollars or how the money is colored is driven by, one large city, our neighbor to the north here. So I think this is really an opportunity. I'm going to try and take every difficult opportunity and spin it in a way or pivot in a way that this is, I won't say an ask, a suggestion to you all, is that having a conversation to where we work together, coordinate together, collaborate together to try and make sure that whatever future funding, okay, so example, tolling, I don't know how that's going to go. Okay, but Metro is looking, and maybe Councilor Christine Lewis can speak a little about that, but that would be a funding stream that Metro would have control over, and it would be if they did a region-wide tolling within the Metro region, that would be the surface roads, so to speak, and then you'd have ODOT tolling the interstates, perhaps. Are we to have control or say in that money? I'll tell you the way it's structured, I doubt it. And then the other thing that's coming along in 2027, all new cars made will have a federal requirement to have a mileage reporting function, and they're going to call that the road user fee. So basically, it will be the VMT or vehicle miles traveled that we've been talking about for years, and it will be a substitute for gas tax. So the gas tax revenues we're counting on today on that 50-30-20 split will be dwindling. And will we have control of those dollars? Will we get the same fair allocation? I'm concerned about that. So I think being proactive about it and getting in front of it is a way to take this little situation that we're in and saying, and I think it'll say, it appears to be that having discretion over the VRF, for example, is a big deal. So will we have discretion over those future dollars? And is there a way of augmenting our strategic investment fund with some of these other new future funding streams? Like if there is tolling, hopefully not. If there is a road user fee, which I think is a good idea, that gets the electric cars, everyone paying their fair share. But the reliance on gas tax, that doesn't have much of a future for us. And I think it's a crude way and not a good way of collecting road user fees. So I really am an advocate, frankly, of the road user fee and the vehicle reporting, but that'll take years to implement as the new cars come in and the old cars are phased out, and they'll never be completely phased out. But I just want to put that out there that there's an opportunity here for us to get that dialogue started again, and with a more visionary, futuristic look into how we do. And maybe if we advocate together, we can make sure that whatever comes down the pike, and something's coming soon on tolling, the legislature needs to make a decision, or ODOT needs to make a decision, because they want a bond to toll 205, to build 205. So they need a bond soon because they want to put it out to bid at the end of this year. So something is going to be decided here very shortly.
Thanks, Commissioner. We got about 5 minutes left, and we still have updates and other business pieces. Commissioner Schrader, your hand's up, and I want to give you your moment as well.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask if our rural folks can weigh in on this. Now, if you can't, if we don't have time tonight, that's fine. But I've been a real proponent of rural economic development, getting those roads, making things passable so our agricultural economy can succeed, as well as people commuting, and also having you folks have your own areas of industry that you're trying to promote. I know Canby's got a big center. I know Sean's got a big center, and Sandy. So to me, this is an economic development issue. So at some point, can our rural caucus tell us what they think? Because you're the ones that really face it with some of our citizens that just think there's some mythological Department of Fraud, Waste, and Mismanagement, I guess. I mean, I kind of hate to say that, but geez, this is like helping your businesses and jobs and everything else. So, I took a real risk, which I'm fine with because, oh well. But I think this is a real issue for our rural communities. I really do. So,
Stan, your hand's up. Do you want to take a stab at it?
I'll try. I'm someone that will say, when this came online, we had a lot of conversations in our community about what we would want to do with the funds. It's going to go to our 362nd Bell Street connection, which, allows another entry into our high school that helps out our education commute. Also opens up about 40 acres worth of development opportunity. So we totally see the positive in it. But I think I probably agree with some of my rural colleagues. I certainly can't speak for all of them, but for me, I was voted by the people, right? And so I get a little concerned when I hear, people speaking up and talking about things that, didn't pass and wouldn't pass. And yet we pass it anyways, because, we believe that we have a set of facts and information that somehow, make us more educated and better voters on these things than our constituents. And so, I've also heard that we got to improve education, and I agree, but I think we should improve the education on the campaign trail, right? And put these proposals in front of our constituents and get these projects and improve our communication and our level of communication, but so that we can pass it. But I don't know. I get really concerned when we're talking about things that haven't passed, won't pass, and we're just going to do it anyways, because I believe we're elected servants of the people.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm just going to respond to that. I agree with you. We are elected servants of the people, but for me, that also means that sometimes I'm going to have to make a tough decision in order to move forward with something for the greater good. And it's not because I think I'm smarter, better, more informed necessarily, but when I know that the greater good is going to be able to give you the access you need for your businesses, I'm willing to fall on my sword for it, which is pretty much what I did, actually, because I'm not particularly, my philosophy is not left, not right, but forward, and I just thought, okay, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and take the tomatoes. One of my themes in who I am personally, that I'll tell you folks, is that sometimes as an elected official, you got to make a tough decision, and it's going to be your job to get the tomatoes thrown at you. And you just got to take it, because for me, I'll tell you, that was a very risky vote. That was risky. But then when I saw what the trade-offs were, I thought I'm going to have to take the tomatoes on this one. So thanks, Stan. But the question is for you directly. Do you want to unwind? Okay. Do the rural communities want to unwind what you can potentially have to make your community better and more accessible? And if it means that I have to kind of get beat up, I'm okay with that, guys. Okay. I'm all right. I've been doing this a long time. I don't take anything personally. Yeah. I'm used to getting beat up. Okay. So that's just my attitude right now, because I'm like, oh God, we went down the road. Now we're going to go back from, no pun intended, pull back from the road, and everybody's all set to move on this stuff. And I'm like, oh, so what I did and took a major risk to do this. I'm like, well, I just don't want it to be for naught, you guys. I just got to say. So anyway, well, thanks, Stan. I really like you. You're a fun guy. I want to get you the roads, right? And if I have to fall on my sword, I'm glad to do it for you, buddy. Just saying. Okay.
Hey, I get it. I helped close a swimming pool in the last 2 years. I mean, I understand.
Thank you both. Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Sounds like we have a future, very important future agenda item. Mayor Kaiser, yes, I saw your hand up. I'm gonna give you, do you still want take the last word on this before we close out the evening?
Sure. I just want to touch on kind of what Stan said. I kind of agree with what he's saying. A year ago, I was just the everyday average Joe Blow in my city. Never been on city council, planning, anywhere in politics. I put out a campaign and I won as mayor. And I told the people when I came in, the only thing I owe to anybody is my voters. And so taking a decision away from the voters, I also don't agree with. If I can go from being the everyday average dump truck driver to becoming the mayor of this city, to me, that says the voters, they do listen. And putting this message out to them, showing them the benefits, talking to them, everything less than that's hearsay on where it would have gone. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mayor Kaiser. I appreciate that. Okay, well, we were going to get this on an agenda item for sure. And we'll move in here because we're pushing over time. Do we have any JPAC impact updates at all? We'll go JPAC first.
Yeah, I'll give you an update on JPAC. I'm concerned, folks. What came out of the last JPAC meeting, we had no opportunity to comment because there was a time crunch and the agenda was pretty tight. But there is a emergency routes plan study that's been underway for, if they're in a case of emergency, what do we need for infrastructure? What do we need for roads and so on? And evacuation routes are part of that. And I was actually shocked, very disappointed, very stunned that there was very little emphasis on escape routes or evacuation routes. And it seemed to get loaded up with a lot of regionally internal projects, as opposed to how do you get a Dodge, right, in a Cascadia. And the only person who got the comment on it was the Portland City Commissioner, forgot her name at the moment, but she actually made a similar comment, is that, well, you added all these projects and so on, and why'd you add all these projects internally? And it was Commissioner Hardesty. And I had my hand up after her, but I wasn't recognized. So I'm talk to my transportation staff, and I'm inclined that we bring this and have a bigger discussion, bring this back to C4 and everyone, because 2 or 3 weeks ago, I-84 was closed. It was flat closed. It closes often. And in a Cascadia, even if it wasn't closed due to winter conditions, there's a lot of landslides and bridges that'll probably go down in Cascadia. And that's considered the major escape route to Eastern Oregon. We're supposed to land, the center of the state's going to be supposedly Redmond, the city of Redmond, or the Redmond Airport. So that really leaves Highway 212 and Highway 26 out and up over the mountain, and which is really, as you know, like a 1-lane road for a lot of it, and maybe 2 lanes for part of it. Not much of shoulders anywhere. And I just kind of flash back to Katrina, and looking at the aerials of showing all the cars bumper to bumper on several lanes leaving New Orleans, going out. And I can imagine how embarrassing this will be for the state of Oregon when we realize that, several million people here in the metro region and a single lane road going out. It's not a pretty picture. So anyhow, I'd like to bring that back. That's what was discussed there. And I'll just stop there.
Commissioner, can I add something to that? So in that conversation, they did say that they are applying for a second phase of funding for these studies. And they did identify that this would allow them to do some tiering of the routes, which would clarify which ones are the priorities to be cleared and opened in some sort of event, and would also help them get additional funding in there. I think they heard loud and clear that there was concern about a sense that there was a dearth of planning for how you actually use those transportation routes. And it sounds like some of that could be in the second phase. Did you want to talk about any of the Burnside Bridge update? Because that speaks to a little bit about 26, or about the update from Congressman Blumenauer?
Sure, go ahead, Councilor.
Okay. Super quick, just they're still working on the Burnside Bridge. That's the route for getting the west side of the river connected to the aforementioned 26 and Redmond route. So they're trying to make that seismically sound. It's going to be expensive. They don't know how they're going to pay for it. Surprise. And then we heard from Congressman Blumenauer, and I shared this information in an email with the C4 metro cities, just that he told us that earmarks were coming back, and all of our staff in the metro area have received a request for identifying projects. So there is a process that is happening. It is unclear to me why, or how JPACT will be involved in the future, if at all. But it is happening, and they are saying an infrastructure package is coming, and he is encouraging us to really build on T2020 and to do collaborative work, and to, as we're working collaboratively, keep in mind and in sight arguments that are framed around climate, economic recovery, and equity. And that's all work that was done in the T2020 process. And he's very fond of the T2020 process. So those projects may get some priority. Things that we can think about as we're having future conversations about transportation funding and how we all work together on that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that what gave me a little bit of pause was that the public outreach portion of what T2020 became did not meet a lot of the federal requirements or the federal processes that we normally do. Stakeholder involvement, and specifically stakeholders involvements, including and especially cities and counties. It was very, very weak in that regard, did not meet federal requirements. And so to leverage that is really a circumvention of, number one, accountability in our elected capacities, but also circumvents our own individual needs, which are unique in the region.
And that's where the benefit of it being just one congressman speaking is helpful.
All right, MPAC.
Yeah, I can on impact. I'll pick up where they left off on JPAC on the regional emergency transportation routes. We also received a presentation on that. And in my notes, it was interesting. They said that they added approximately 50 new routes. And when I asked if they were going to use the last two disasters that we just recently had, the ice storm and the wildfires, particularly the wildfires where we had to evacuate, half of our county or more. I asked them if they were going to use that data or anything from that to kind of true up their model or validate what routes they were adding and all of that, because we had real live world experience. The answer was no. And so, I was really surprised by that answer. So I would be interested to maybe hear a little bit more about that. It sounded like they were punting a lot of stuff to the phase 2 of operationalizing it, but I felt like maybe there was a missed opportunity by not, since we all went through, or many of us went through the evacuation process with the wildfires, I thought maybe we would have something to add to that. So, and then the other thing, Impact reviewed the Greater Portland Economic Development District Economic Recovery Strategy. And the main thing to know on that is it's pivoting from a 5-year plan to a short-term plan because of COVID. So while they are focused on economic development and and land use and how those things tie together. They're really trying to make it be more impactful in the near term instead of it being more of a longer term plan. And the last thing I'll mention that you may be interested in is there is a new grant program coming out of Metro. It's called the Civic Engagement Capacity Building Grants. And this is a new program. It looks like to be for 501c3s, but what's interesting is rarely do we have grants that really focus on capacity building. So if you have a 501c3 in your community that is trying to do community engagement, but they could use more resources, this sounds like a perfect opportunity for them to consider that. So again, the name of that is the Civic Engagement Capacity Building Grants. And I think the applications are due in another month or two, so, or 1 month. It's March, end of March. I see Christine Lewis helping me, end of March. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. Not to leave off this off the agenda, but real quick, any other business? I see Trent waving his hand, but I'm going to supersede you for a moment, Trent, because Commissioner Lewis has a guest with her, and I think that she needs to introduce her guest with her.
Yes, sorry, my guest joined me just for a little bit. Carrick Ellis Lewis Salvaggio, resident of District 2, 8 months old, very vocal. He can crawl, he can climb. We're not baby proofed over here. We're screwed.
And he smiled at all of us. He's a great
Yes.
smiler.
Adorable. All right, Trent, top that.
I cannot because I have to take us back to business just a little bit, but I'll try to do it quickly so we can all go to bed, or at least I want to go to bed. So number one, on the evacuation route conversation that Commissioner Smith was just mentioning, that's on tap to come to the C4 Metro subcommittee meeting. And so there's an opportunity for conversation there because it's happening at the JPAC and impact tables. And then for the R1 Act, which was an agenda item that we missed, and so apologize for that. But I mentioned last month that there are 2 openings at the R1 Act that are Clackamas seats. One of them is a business community member seat that's currently held by Bill Merchant. He has mentioned that he wants to continue in that seat, so that does not require a vote of anything. Because that can just continue onward. This group said that they would be okay if he wanted to continue to encourage that. So I'll tee up a letter for this group at the next meeting. But that leaves the city seat that's still open, which has traditionally been held by an urban city seat or a city within the metro boundary. That's not a requirement that it is that seat. It could be just easily be a rural seat. So I will leave it to y'all on what y'all want to do here. Last month, y'all said kind of continue as is, but what I will do now is after this meeting, or maybe on Monday, send out a reminder email just for this topic. If you want to serve on the R1 Act, to please let me know to start a nomination process that will be a vote this group takes at the next meeting for who serves in that seat. And it'll just be for the cities. And I'll do it for urban and rural because I have not heard, otherwise, but I'll put it out there, and then whoever submits the nomination form, we can manage that at the next meeting. We'll put some time on for it. And then finally, I see that we have a hand raised in the attendee list from Thelma Hagemiller. Thelma, just wanted you to know that I see that hand. We haven't traditionally allowed public comment during these meetings, but if you want to email me directly, I'll see that your question or comment gets to the right person. That's twilson2@clackamas.us. twilson2@clackamas.us. Thanks.
Thanks, Trent, for those pieces, and I apologize for missing that R1 Act piece. Getting a little excited about crossing things off the agenda this evening. Hey, that's not happened to a mayor that's on here yet. It will, just so you know. Okay. See, we've had babies, we've talked VRF and emergency routes. Thank you all. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll
Thank
second.
you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, thank you. Appreciate it. See you next month.